that? Oh God, I'm gonna die. I gotta get this on camera. No. Hey everybody, welcome to the Marino Show. I'm your host, David Marino, and I'm so excited to have my guest today. I am talking to Rob. He is the man behind Righteous Retro. He hosts pop-up markets, concerts that include retro pop-ups. He also caught my attention because he does a lot of horror trivia nights at We Love Video. So many different things that he does under the umbrella of Righteous Retro. So we're going to get right into that. Rob, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me, David.
So I know that you do so many different types of events here in the Austin area, and a lot of that revolves around video, vinyl. I love records and videos right up my alley. Some of that, has to do with some horror type things, but tell me how you ended up sort of building your business from the ground up, because you're one of those people that's kind of been doing this for a long time, and it seems like it's just gradually gotten larger and larger and larger to now where you're doing so many different types of events here in the Austin area. So how did that all start for you?
Yeah, good question. Sometimes I lose track myself. Well, I think it just kind of snowballed over different experiences and projects I've had throughout most of my life. Um, Especially with the video. I used to be on the Tape Trader network back in the 90s, where we used to do stuff through the mail and classified ads. And, it was a very different experience. This was even before people had like file sharing networks. As far as the vinyl goes, I was really into it as a small child, even because my folks were, really into records. And then I inherited one of my relatives' records at a very young age. And then fast forward beyond the 90s, I had this company called Rock and Bones that I started as originally a video project that kind of came out of the comps and stuff that I started in the underground in the 90s. But then I started shooting stuff, interviewing bands and stuff like that, and people who were in like horror movies and cult movies that I enjoyed. That became a clothing company. And not too long after it died, I started going to the Austin VHS Swap, which used to be held at Kick Butt. That was started by a friend, Mitch Rafter, who did Gore Noir magazine. And B was also involved as well as a projectionist and helped with booking. Anyways, that started kind of fading out a little bit around 2019, beginning of 2020. And I stepped in for Mitch's role. So B and I were doing that for a couple years, and then basically like we weren't able to do the Austin VHS swap quite as much as we wanted to during and then coming out of the pandemic. So I just decided that I would start doing Righteous Retro, which I started in my backyard during the shut-in days and early pandemic days. And so I basically took all that stuff I was kind of blabbing about and put it into Righteous Retro. Oh yeah, and you had also mentioned concerts and whatnot. I used to book and do stuff like that about 20 years ago. I took a long break, started getting into it again, like in the last 2.5 years or so, doing sound for concerts. So I just took all these elements, put them together in the same, events. So now I just do that all over town in Austin.
Well, I have to imagine that that is quite like enjoyable, and also that you've met many people throughout the years that are connected here in Austin in that world. For you, what has been, I guess, the most rewarding part of being involved and having your hand in all these different jars? Because it is cool that you've been able to take all the things that you've done over, the last 20 years, and now you've kind of brought them all under, Righteous Retro. So it kind of all culminated, it seems, into this what we have today, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, I agree. The thing that I value the most is the community. A lot of stuff that I've done over the years, projects, small businesses, what have you, I did it because I wanted to. Um, I don't know. I kind of had visions. I was like, well, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this and we could all hang out and we're all like-minded people, you know. So that's basically what that is now. It's kind of like it's just the end results of everything like that, just making sure that you know everyone can get along. And especially in the last fairly recent years, it's just, I'm not saying that Austin's dead. I don't think it is by any means, the culture that is. But the political climate that's affected the entire nation is clearly affected Austin as well. And then just the way just real estate's affected, a lot of really great businesses and hangouts to be pushed, from one area of town to another and then completely out of town. I wanted to figure out a way to have that culture that made me fall in love with Austin back in the 90s and preserve it and make it so that it can't get pushed out. I think that that would be what I value the most, just making sure that community's here.
I'm so glad you brought that up because when just going to the event that you had over the weekend, which was like a vinyl VHS kind of retro type event, um, it does feel like the old Austin. Like I didn't grow up here; I grew up in San Antonio. However, I would come and visit Austin a lot in the '90s, in my 20s, and just going to the different places like Waterloo Records. I still go there to this day, but there's so many other things in Austin that have changed with obviously tech coming into town. It has pushed a lot of the artists out of the Austin area into like the neighboring cities where you're seeing cities like Lockhart that have become like a hot spot for art, music. So I appreciate that you're keeping that alive here in the Austin area. And I also have to imagine that for you, being able to give these different creatives an outlet to sell their merchandise. What has that been like to kind of see over the years, just how there have been changes, but to be able to see these people like able to do these things at these events, like stuff that they've created. I know paintings, different kind of horror related stuff. Have you heard from them and how important this is for them to have these types of events in Austin to keep that going?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's just, it makes it very fulfilling, and I get lots of feedback. In fact, uh, right now, just on the other side of this computer screen, there's a product of that going on with me dubbing copies of an upcoming video release. There are a number of local animators who would come to the pop-ups for the last few years, and I said, it would be rad if we could get together, and do something in some way. And my friend Ben Baldwin, who's an animator, he was like, started laying out some of the framework and basically figuring out who specifically can commit, and what we can put on a program for an independently released VHS that compiles everything. So I don't have the date for the screening yet, and I'm still working on the cover art. But I would say within the next month, maybe 2 months, we're going to have a new home video release that's going to be real limited quantity that has a number of local animators, and it's going to be a kind of a combination of what people liked about liquid television, back in the day, and then maybe a little bit of that absurdist humor that you see on some of the stuff on like Adult Swim. So that's one example of something coming out of the community collaboratively.
Well, me myself, I'm more of an introvert. Like I have to be, I'm in what extroverted at work, so an introverted extrovert for work. But like I'm trying to get more into going to things like, like the types of events that you host because I do feel for me that's an area, especially in the horror genre, you can see some of my stuff behind me. There's Jason. I always have felt very connected to that world and not just horror, but people that are in that creative space. It feels very inviting and that you can be an individual. you can be different. You were speaking to like how divided the country is, especially over the past, 5 to 8 years. We've really seen that ramp up. For me, it always gives me like a feeling of I'm around, like you said, like-minded people. Um, I think that it's really important to have those kind of safe spaces. So for you, does it even kind of extend beyond the fact that yeah, you're having videos and people that are selling their art, but it also feels like it's a place that's safe.
Oh, absolutely. I consider it a sanctuary, and in a way, uh, I felt that was a little deliberate, just because, like you said, obviously there's always a horror element of every project or event that I work on. And I agree that if you're into something, like say horror, the genre, you know, you just people that you have that in common with, you can have your dark sense of humor. You can, just be yourself, because it's not as popular as horror movies do on the box office, through certain cycles. It's still kind of a subversive type of art. And yeah, it's almost like a secret, handshake or something, like, "Oh, you like horror? Oh, okay, I can be myself around you. We can just kind of let it all hang out and be ourselves." But yeah, it's a very inclusive community. I'd say anything that's righteous retro, especially, like, there's all kinds of folks there. It's definitely a safe space. I've never experienced an issue where someone was like, just a jerk or a bully, or you know someone that wears a red hat or something like that. You know what I mean? So but at the same time, it's not like politics really, or things of that nature really even come up that much, because we're all just bonding, and just sharing past experiences, and then creating new memories. And that's what I dig about it. Like, a lot of folks, there's people that come and hang out that don't even have VCRs, and they don't have turntables. They just like the environment, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. So like over the weekend at your event, I picked up like Swamp Thing. Love that movie. The
oh yeah.
Entity. I don't know if you've seen that. And then
Oh yeah.
Prom Night. I love 80s slasher flick. So oh, and then of course I can't forget Spaceballs. That's like a classic. So
Oh yeah.
um when you think of some of the, films or records or things like that that were sort of a part of your youth and even today, what comes to mind when you think of like films that kind of, or even music that maybe inspired you to go into, this kind of world that you're in?
Well, I definitely think that, as far as counterculture goes, and like the types of art and film and music that we were just discussing, there's definitely more birds of a feather here in Austin. Like, I grew up in Corpus Christi, uh really conservative. Like, the things are a little different now, I'm sure, like when I go visit, but like, you're looking for trouble if you're wearing a black shirt. Like, I'll tell you that much. Growing up, there's like, even in the 90s, you know how like in the 90s people would say, like, "Oh, these punk kids, they have it so easy in the 90s. That stuff's on MTV now or whatever." But like, I remember the 90s, like it may as well have been like the early 80s. Like, there's people like throwing like glass bottles at you, like driving down the street and stuff, wanting to start fights and stuff like that. So, like, I would say, like, a lot of stuff growing up, I when I would come and visit Austin, I was like, well, I know everyone's gonna definitely be into, like, punk rock. They're gonna definitely love horror movies. They're gonna, just be into cult stuff, the stuff that, no one even would give a chance, except for a small audience where I grew up. So, stuff along the lines of like Return of the Living Dead, um, any number of like classic punk stuff, especially the Texas stuff, like, you know, uh, like the Dicks or Big Boys, but not just exclusively to Texas, obviously. Just enjoying Rocky Erickson and 13th floor elevators. But yeah, you kind of get my taste. Probably very similar to you. I definitely dig the '80s horror movies. So.
Yeah, that's my favorite. I love the 80s slashers. I mean, some of my favorites are there's a movie that it didn't get a lot of attention in the 80s, but it's found its audience. Final Exam. It's one of those that I love. I love all the Friday the 13th, obviously. And then I also like a lot of other types of indie films that aren't really horror, like Welcome to the Dollhouse, one of my favorites. Um, I love John Waters. Anything he does is great. So again, I think that is along like the counterculture, people who don't really I never really felt like I fit in, not because I feel like I liked all these really unique things per se, but even growing up in San Antonio. And, I remember watching late at night when you used to have cable and you'd watch movies like on TBS. And I had not really known about the Ramones. And then Rock and Roll High School came on at like 2 in the morning. And that just resonated with me. I love that movie. And so, when I see the things that you're doing, it reminds me of kind of those days where, loving that kind of art that not everybody else got necessarily, and so, with you doing Righteous Retro and you already do so many different things, is there something that you want to do or a type of event that you want to hold that you haven't done yet? What do you see Where do you see yourself going with the Righteous Retro umbrella?
That's a good question. It's something I've been wondering myself as of late, because I've definitely been overextending myself in this year, in particular. Even though I cut down on the promoting the concert combos a little bit this year, um, it's like I use that Righteous Retro might as well just be Rob, like as far as how I use it. It's like my calling card. So whatever I feel like doing, I just throw that out there. I use the logo. It's kind of like the branding. So, honestly, what I wanted to do was, I wanted to figure out if there was a way for me to like, you know, cut down a little bit on some of them and just space it out a little bit and then really make them count. Like, you know, uh, sometimes I get a little anxious about doing, like, for instance, monthly, I've been doing that Austin Beer Works one. That takes a lot out of you. I mean, that's like 20, 25 vendors in addition to the other things. I kind of wanted to consider maybe doing stuff every other month, every 3 months, and then making it like you're to where you're definitely expecting like several bands as well. You're definitely expecting a movie screening. Um, Maybe at least one special guest that would be from, like a if they're not performing, maybe a musician that, from along the styles that we were talking about that everyone recognizes, signing records, or perhaps a guest that was in one of these cult movies or something like that, just someone people recognize, but not going like to the extent of making it like a full on convention, just like a little mini thing. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, I also, like my lease is up in July, coming up next summer, and I really want to stay in Austin, but at the same time, I'm kind of debating whether or not I need to look at some other, you know, place, hopefully nearby, to buy some property. You mentioned Lockhart. I love Lockhart. I like what's going on there. So I'm kind of just keeping it open. We'll see what happens next year.
If people want to catch any like of your monthly type events, I know one of the other things that you do is you do a tribute night. What are some things that people can catch you at that you do on a routine basis for now?
Oh, right. Yeah. So once a month, down at We Love Video, I host the Fangoria horror trivia and movie night, and it's usually on a Saturday. It kind of just depends on what we have going on with the calendar, but it's usually the last Saturday or second to last Saturday of the month. Every Tuesday, next door actually at the Tigress Pub, I host the BYO Vinyl and Trivia Night. So yeah, I keep busy on North Loop, but you can definitely come hang out, have a drink, do some trivia, listen to some music, or watch a movie.
So you're pretty busy because you have your normal, your normal day job. And then this is a job in itself as well, right? I mean, you're doing a lot all the time, but I have to, think that this is sort of like is this more of like your passion doing all of the events that you do and being involved in physical media? Because we live in a time where there's nothing wrong with streaming. I stream things all the time. However, I miss like holding up an album and reading the liner notes and seeing the actual like art on the cover of a VHS box that I used to see when I was a kid. um so I imagine there are a lot of people that, for that very reason, probably love the type of events that you put on. But is that where it comes from also for you? Just that passion to sort of keep that media alive in some way?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say a lot of it is the passion. I mean, if I weren't doing this um, as often as I do, I would want to have the opportunity to go, partake in someone else's event that's, done the same way or similar way rather. It's just it's like I'm not the biggest sports fan. I'm not the biggest like new, you know, blockbuster hit movie fan. I don't wait for, whatever the latest anything is. I don't wait in lines. I don't, I'm kind of a weirdo, you know what I mean? So like to be able to get involved, build and maintain a community like that's something I feel very passionate about. It's just, it's a lot of fun. And like I mentioned earlier, sometimes, it can be a bit much. It can be a lot of work, but to me, it's worth it. So,
Is there something that you can think of over, the past 20 years, or an event or something that you've hosted that stands out to you? I mean, I know obviously they're all very important, but is there one? You said this started in your backyard. Um, is there anything that you can think of over the past years that kind of was that light bulb that said, "Yeah, this is why I'm doing this"? Like a certain event or just something that happened that just, reminded you of why, you do what you do?
that's a good question. I don't think I can necessarily remember what the lineup was or, but I definitely feel like it was one of the parlor events before the parlor closed. I used to work nights there and I would DJ, run sound for a lot of concerts, and I would book and promote events there. And I remember there was one where it was what the block party events, excuse me, and it was just so packed, and there were all these people that I've known from like every I forget the count because I moved all over Texas my life, but like I think it's like 5 cities I've lived in, and there was someone that I've known since like as far back as like the early 90s there. There was someone from Houston, there was someone from Denton, there was someone from Corpus, there was someone from Dallas, there was someone, just all over the place. And I was like, whoa, everyone's, you know, I've encountered in one way or another is like here. And we still get to talk to each other and we're still into the same stuff. This is this is what I want. This is what I want to do like on a weekend. This is just fun.
What else would you like people to know just about, your world and what you do, or, any kind of future things that are coming up?
Come check out the Tigress Bring Your Own Vinyl and Retro Trivia every Tuesday from 7 to 11. Um, Keep an eye out for the calendar at We Love Video. I'm part of the events team, so if I'm not hosting something there, I'm at least contributing and volunteering, helping, make sure that we have that video community there. And I'm also doing on location hosting where we're taking We Love Video screens out to different venues. Um, And oh yeah, I keep procrastinating because I feel like I gotta just do things right. But I'm planning on bringing my old company Rock and Bones back, but as an event series. The last incarnation of that was a clothing company that um, had a really good run and just kind of faded out, and I was kind of bummed about it because like somewhere in the middle, it became a partnership with my ex-wife, and when the marriage faded out, that kind of faded out too, and I had to kind of cut my losses and be like, let me just tie this up with a bow and end it because it's just too difficult, as a clothing company. And I kind of saw the event thing on the horizon, and it just wasn't time to do that. So I kind of want to, I want to get this going, hopefully within the first quarter of 2025. So keep an eye out on Rock and Bones. It's probably not going to do a clothing thing anymore. It's just going to be something in a similar format as these Righteous Retro, except it'll be more like alternative culture as a whole and deeper emphasis on the horror. Um, so, yeah, just pay attention to the social media that's out there for all of that.
And because I do like horror, you mentioned what Return of the Living Dead. Do you have any, like, what are your favorite horror films, or maybe in the genre, what type of horror films do you like?
Oh yeah. Well, let me see. Fright Night's up there, definitely.
The
Terror.
original.
Oh yeah, obviously the original. Yes, I know some people do like the remake, and you know that's cool. But Fright Night's Fright Night. So let me see. Terror Vision. I finally got a copy of this at one of the markets not too long ago. Geez, I like too many. Phantasm. I'm gonna go see a screening of that tonight, actually, at Altercation Comedy Festival. They're gonna tear that one up. Mystery Science Theater 3000 style, so that'll be fun. Um, yeah, probably a lot of the same ones you dig too. Night of the Demons 2. Those are pretty high up there. I'm definitely
Do you
into the
like
schlocky stuff. You know what I mean?
yeah, I love all the like the slasher. Do you remember a movie called Mortuary with Bill Paxton?
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a pretty good one. You
I
don't hear
like
about
that
that
one
one
a lot.
enough. I
Yeah,
like
I
the
like that
Italian
one.
stuff too.
Yeah. If people want to follow you on social media, where can they find you? Where can they learn more about everything that you're doing?
Oh, right on. Yeah, look for Righteous Retro. So that's basically the handle on both Instagram and Facebook. There's no numbers or spaces or anything, just Righteous Retro.